All right, that was a track called Shrill by Crystal Beth, Beth Fleenor, from her excellent album called Push Through, available on Trey Gunn's 7D Media label. And there's a whole bunch of really great experimental and exploratory vocalization on Beth's record. I highly encourage you to check it out. The URL for her music is in the lower right corner of the screen, crystalbethmusic.com. And we also have with us Julie Slick, the virtuosic, amazing bass player. Thank you for joining, Julie. And
hey, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And hello, Beth. I didn't mean to exclude you from the hello. And then we've got Andre Cholmondeley here as our host. This is, I guess, the first episode where we are using the Confronting Creativity label for the show. So thank you, everyone, for joining. We got a good crowd on YouTube Live. We got about 30 people. So welcome, everyone, to the stream. I want to remind you that you're welcome to ask questions in the live chat, and I will be feeding those questions behind the scenes to Andre. So he'll ask when he feels the moment in the conversation is right. And a couple of housekeeping items. First, I want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. And you're going to want to check in tomorrow on the feed, where Andre will also be interviewing Alex Lifeson, the guitarist from the world famous, one of the top rock bands of all time, Rush. So you don't want to miss that. That's going to be tomorrow at the same time, so 6 p.m. Eastern. And I believe that's everything. It would be great if you could check out those URLs at the bottom of the screen, and please purchase Julie's music and Beth's music. You are directly supporting them through Bandcamp, and they deserve it. This is how we keep good music alive. So with all of that said, Andre, thank you so much for hosting this show, and I will leave it to you to go.
Greetings, all. Thank you, Anthony, for that wonderful introduction. And hey, Julie. Hey, Beth. How are you?
Hi. Hi.
It's, a friend of mine calls this the Brady Bunch thing.
Yeah.
We're all getting used to it. But, we're also all finding some cool new ways to do things. And I want to start by reiterating what Anthony said, and I'm going to say this a couple times. Bandcamp, folks, and all the noise and all the different solutions that are out there, and there's a million debates, there's pros and cons. That's one that's just really clear and really direct. I love just going on there when I have a little extra cash and say, you know what, let's just bookmark some things and just pick some music up and put it on my iPod or whatever. It's a way that the music, the support goes directly to the artist. We've spent nearly 100 years with middle persons in between the artist and the money. Here it is, folks. So you can do this. Go to Bandcamp. We have the links here, and if there's other artists, just search them with the word Bandcamp. There's high quality audio you can get, and you can usually hear something first. So I still find people that don't know about Bandcamp. So really want to emphasize that. And segueing right from that, I want to, these are two of my favorite young creatives these days. I listen to a lot of their music, but I also want to commend them, and I want to start in this area because they both of you are doing the content providing, which is the phrase everyone uses. You got great websites. I talk to artists all the time, and there's no website, there's no info. So I commend you on that. We're going to talk about that. Great websites and great Bandcamp with not just one little record. You both have like 12 or 15 things on there. So let's start there. And I want to start with, some of your experience with what it's like getting direct connection with your artist, with your audience these days. Let's start with Julie. How did you talk to us a little about that, where it kind of started and where you got it to this incredible place with all these releases?
Well, with Bandcamp specifically, because I mean, it pretty much started with Bandcamp from the beginning. Like I think it was Steve Lawson that told me about it via Twitter or something. He was big time promoting Bandcamp back in the day, and so yeah, when I was putting out my first album, I mean, that was the platform that was most recommended to me at that time. I can't remember much about 10 years ago, or 11 years ago now at this point. But I remember Bandcamp being important and recommended. So, I mean, it's just been amazing to watch it grow, and the community, like the way they offer things now, with the subscription service. Obviously that's been great, and it's been a direct link between me and the fans. I post things there all the time. I've been like challenging myself all year long to be creative. This year it's been challenging, because we're not going out and seeing other artists and getting that sort of influence. So I've been challenging myself, just doing like covers of things and posting them on Bandcamp for fun. And yeah, it's been keeping me going this year, where we don't get to go on stage and play for people.
Yeah. You're also the first person I saw that you have merch on there too. You've got whatever shirts and posters and things. So that's a long time then, a good decade. And of course you've got let's see, all kinds of projects on there. People should go look. EchoTest, Slick, Bonner Slick, Fourth Dimension, Fourth Dementia, Paper
Yes.
Cat. I mean, it goes on. So people should follow that up. Beth, how about you? When did you first encounter Bandcamp, and tell us a little bit about how that's helped you reach people?
I think it was about the same time, probably like 10 years ago or something like that. And that was before I had really like launched into Crystal Beth, which is all like all of my written music and a lot of vocal heavy stuff in addition to clarinet. So before that, I was doing predominantly free improvised music with a variety of projects that I led and collaborated with, duos, trios, large ensemble, things like that. And so at that point, 10 years ago, Bandcamp was the entry to like, yeah, you can put stuff up there. It's available. It sounds great. There's obviously a direct line for payment, which is super important. And I also make a lot of merch. Like I do the cross-stitch sound waves, and I've done a lot of jewelry and shirts and whatever, and a lot of art and various things. And so at the beginning, with the free improvised projects in particular, Bandcamp was a place that, you could get the download for the music and include it with the artifacts at shows. So that was the entry point of like why it was exciting, right? And now it's expanded, so I have two. So there's one that's all the improvised stuff in that world, and then there's the world of Crystal Beth, which goes through 7D Media, Trey Gunn's label. And it's direct. It's the only thing that actually cares about the artist, the livelihood of artists, the importance of being able to continue to work on the craft and develop it over a long period of time and sustain. And for me, like, I'll be upfront and say, I hate this concept of content creation. Like, as an artist, as a musician, as a maker, I am into creating multi-sensory experiences, not content that flies by and then, that's just not, I get into a whole thing about that. So Bandcamp is a way to also be really focused on that. Of like, how do you create an experience? Is it a single that you dive into a certain realm? Is it a whole record that's intended to be experienced as a whole record? What are the other physical artifacts that you can get in conjunction with it, and then connect more directly with people? Because that's what it's about, is connecting with each other, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's great, and point well taken. And I love to learn something new every day. And you're right. I use that phrase kind of lazily, even though I'm meaning more than what you're saying, like a 360 kind of a thing. But yeah, you're right. That's a phrase that's really, it means short attention span and kind of just ephemeral nonsense, filling up the screen. So well put. That it's many more layers than that. You mentioned, and I also, I'm glad you brought it up, that you have stuff beyond sound, beyond music. Actually, for both of you, it's so beyond music. That's almost, you do sound creation, and of course it overlaps with what people know of as music. But you also have physical objects, and you have the jewelry and different things. You've said something very interesting. You talk about rituals. You talk about ritual and how that's really important to you in your creativity. Talk to us a little bit about that. Do you see any line between your making of physical art and objects with sound objects? Is it all one ritualistic?
Absolutely. It's all one ritualistic thing. Like, I think that we need a way to deal with ourselves so that we can deal with each other. That's very fundamental to everything that I do and everything that I believe. And we need a container to pour the emotional contents into, right? Like, the range and complexity of human experience is so vast that, words don't do it justice. We have to explore that through sound and through visual, through light, through imagery, also through words, through written, through like audible things. We have to experience it from multiple disciplines and dimensions to try to even get our mind around the entirety of the experience, right? So we need a container to like simplify it and to put all those things into. So whether that is a song, that's a container, a piece of art, visual art, that's a container, all of those things, and I think artifact, capital ART, artifact, for the ritual of it, the catharsis, the release of catching up with yourself, arriving at this, the edge of your eyeballs, while also like staying rooted in yourself and continuing to live from that place.
That's wow. Yeah, that's a great evocative answer that puts it all together. And I think for both of you, you really feel like it's meditative. It's a journey when you both really do music, and that's another kind of a trite phrase, but it's true. It doesn't seem like there's a separation for either of you in this is your life. When you watch your live performances, it's you're just there. Julie, I'm sure, as you already had said, the physical objects and the artwork you do, it's kind of a connection line there. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about just being in this crazy year. Would you say that that music and the ritual of music has gotten you through this? Is that the definitive thing, you think? Or
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's been difficult, I've had to motivate myself to really, pick up the bass and practice and that's why I've been like challenging myself, learning songs, some of my favorite songs and things like that, because otherwise there is kind of like a general malaise and every day is kind of the same. So we kind of have to, at the same time, it's important also though to, I think, be kind to ourselves and be okay with the fact that the creativity won't always flow. And it's funny, I feel like, since having accepted that, like, especially towards the end of 2020, and now that the new year has started, I've felt like just a certain resurgence. Maybe it's like the new year thing. But new president, who knows? But I do feel like in the last few weeks, there's just been like just a shift. And I've personally, like, even today, like, picked up the bass and was like goofing around and even just practicing old like EchoTest songs, but still like, so yeah, music has definitely helped, when I do feel like, playing or learning something or writing something, heaven forbid, write something. Um, but it's not everything. There's been other outlets too, like cooking and, just going for safe walks outside.
Right, which every one of those can be creative, and of course,
True.
we've done some interviews about your food. For people who don't know, Julie is top. She could have just had a career in a 5-star restaurant somewhere. She's a wonderful chef, wonderful cook, and on the road does a lot of cooking too. So it's another area of creativity. But I like that you were just very honest about sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes there's and there's dark shit, and we have to, and that's really that's something that sometimes people think we just have to be happy and smiling all the time. And I think you both kind of evoke the dark side too when it has to happen. Yeah, Beth, another great quote is just talking about art is the discipline of being. You say that on your and I love that because you can look at that from a couple different ways. I wanted to talk a little bit about creativity in a collaborative sense, because that's what's really cool too, is that you both, and I think this is important. I tell this to my students sometimes, it's great to be a solo artist. That's really important. Develop your own thing, but working with others. And so I'd like you to each talk about that a little bit, because what I find remarkable too is that you both do that's kind of unique. There's no ageism. Ben Levin from Bent Knee had a great discussion the other day on here, and he talked about respecting people of all ages, but I love that if someone goes through your list of artists that you've worked with, wow, it's teenagers, it's people in their 80s. There doesn't seem to be any kind of, so starting with Beth, talk to me a little bit about how you approach collaborative stuff, because you've worked with some incredible people, of course, Wayne Horvitz and Trey Gunn, who we all love, is a dear friend of ours, Terry Riley, wow, and just a bunch of people who really have disparate types of music that they've done. Talk a little bit about that, like collaboration and creativity, and where that sits for you.
Yeah, well, I think I made a choice 20 years ago that I was going to really focus on being myself as much as possible through my tools and through my instruments. So for me, that's as a clarinetist, playing the clarinet family, but I don't play other woodwinds, right? Like I don't play saxophone, I don't play flute, I don't play oboe, I don't play any of that other stuff. I am, as far as woodwinds go, I'm clarinet centric, right? And then that expanded to the voice and to percussion and electronics. And all of them have been about being committed to who am I and how does my voice as an individual come through these tools. Then I have been lucky to spend my life seeking out and being connected to other people that do that same thing, right? And so I get brought in to be myself as an improviser, as a composer. And something I just made me remember the great Butch Morris. I did some time with Butch Morris in conduction, and we had an exchange of letters at one point, and it was at a time where I was developing my blindfolded practice, and I was just grappling with a lot of questions about collaboration and connection and how to practice these things on a daily basis. And he said, you have a lot of friends in the universe of music. They will find you and you will find them. And that is the fundamental guiding principle, right? Of like, you walk into a scenario and there's like a magnet that happens of like, oh, this is the person that I need to know. This is the person I need to collaborate with. Let's go in and see what we make together. That's different than what I would make by myself. It's different what you would make by yourself. We're going to create something that's never been created before as a result of us existing now together, right? And I am so thankful that I've gotten to do that with so many different kinds of musicians and artists, of many disciplines. And that's certainly, that was the thing when I met Julie, right? Like, it was a moment of like, yeah, all right, yeah, I know you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm waiting for you. Like,
Yeah.
let's go, you know.
That
I don't know if that answers your question, but that
totally does. Especially that concept that I think people still kind of struggle with. That there's the person you're improvising with, and then there's some third thing that's created that has nothing to do with, and just trusting that. I think a lot of musicians have trouble with that sometimes. Just trusting, like, you know, that it's going to be there. Julie, before I want to hear your answer to that, let's talk about a bit of what you've done together, because the project you did, what was it? It's now 2 years ago, where you did the big.
Oh, the Troot project.
Yeah.
3
years.
Yeah.
October of 2017. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Julie, talk a little bit about that for a second, because that was the first time I saw you enter that world. You had just gotten to Seattle, I guess. And
Yeah, I mean, I had flown to Seattle a few times over the past like year and a half at that point, working with Steve Ball, fellow Crafty, and you know, when I say Crafty, that's, you know, Robert Fripp's Guitar Craft, you know, School of Hard Knocks. No, and so I was going there back and forth, and Steve asked me to be involved in this project for called Troot. It was a project headed by Tim Root, the composer, and Beth. I mean, if you want to chime in on that, you know, it's a 10-piece. What do we call it? Chamber prog.
I don't remember what all the words are around it, but I know, this is what I know, is that Tim wrote a bunch of music that was really incredible, originally for solo piano, and he brought 10 people together to realize that as a rock band, right? Rock orchestra, chamber, prog, whatever.
And how
right?
many days do we have to do that? Like a week in
We
a
had like
house?
3 days to learn the music, and then 3 days in the studio, something like that, right? And we were living in a house together, and it was amazing in the sense that both Steve as the facilitator and Tim as the composer came together to choose who these sorcerers were going to be, right? That like each of them were like, oh, I think we should bring this person to the table because they have this whole arsenal of how they use their voice, and we should bring this person. And you know, so brought all these people together, and then it was one of those, you know, magic moments that you can't predict, where it was all the right people for the job that needed to be done, and created something far bigger than the thing itself. You know, the sum is greater than its parts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had convinced them to hire EchoTest. So my Italians came over and were like, so basically it was like EchoTest was the rhythm section. So Marco and I split bass duties. But in all honesty, Marco played most of the bass on that record, and I just did like beep, boop, baloo type sounds, and had a lot of fun doing that. I channeled my inner Adrian, yeah, there. And yeah, so that was when we first met, October 2017. And like you said, Beth, you know, it was like we met, and it was like this magical cosmic, yes, there's you know, meaning behind this. We will, you know, collaborate in the future. And that's when I asked you to shred on one of my tracks, and then you had asked me to play a few shows when I got to town a year and a half ago. And so we played a year ago at this point, last live gig that we've done, I think.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those like thwarted by the pandemic, thwarted by the global trauma. Is that we were like, you were traveling a lot, you were touring a lot, and so we were like doing little bits and pieces of like, yeah, I'll record on this, and when you come to town, you'll play here and whatever, of like, and then when you moved here, you know, it was like, yeah, finally we can like make all this stuff, and it's going to be great and so exciting, and I can't wait. And then boom, pandemic. Here we are a year later, you know, just trying to like keep it together and keep going. But I also know we're going to make more stuff in the future.
Yeah, we're only a few blocks away from each other now, so it's pretty
Getting some N95s in. So and that's a great, you know, that's a great segue to my brother from another mother and fellow Make Weird Music contributor, and author Cedric Hendricks. He has a question along those lines. He's asking, is it tougher to find motivation to collaborate remotely as opposed to being in person? Can you still feel the ideas flowing the same way? How much,
I'll say, and I'm sure Julie has her own world with this, but for me right now, because of the pandemic and everything, there has been this real necessity of, I need to make music for me to deal with myself and to deal with my emotions, right? And to rally the energy to get those molecules mixed up takes a lot of effort. So it's hard for me to go the next step of like making something to collaborate with somebody else, or make something and have them add to it. It's an ongoing dialogue and evolution, but I will say for the last year, I haven't had the inclination to collaborate with somebody else. It has been about finding the time to dive into myself and just try to deal emotionally, and that's where, and like Julie said, like the, forgiveness thing of yourself, like being gentle with yourself about it, because the momentum just hit a wall, right? Of like, I played hundreds of shows a year, and when I wasn't playing a show, I was in the recording studio or working on, rehearsing, blah, 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 whatever, like, and then all of that just stopped. And so my whole mantra around art is the discipline of being has really come like front and center of like, this is it. Now you have the tools to practice to get through this. It's like, what are you eating? What are you reading? What are you watching? How are you functioning? And what do you need creatively to survive, right? Emotionally survive. I'm lucky that my environment, I'm very safe and protected, but emotionally survive.
Wow. No, that's a great point. Again, all of it, but that last part, emotional survival and taking care of yourself. That's number one. Julie, same question. And for both of you, obviously, there's been years of doing remote. That's the thing with a lot of us musicians. We've worked with people around the world, and Julie, you have half of your bands in Europe and all that.
I mean, that's it. Yeah. Go.
Tell us on the same thing though. Is there been any change in that collaborative?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really funny because most of how EchoTest has always worked has been through remote collaboration. I'll come up with an idea, send it to Marco, he adds parts, we send it back and forth until we feel it's ready. We go into the studio, do the drums, do the mix, it's done. We haven't sent like anything to each other this year because yes, we do have an album that's already like in the process, like later in the stages, like basically in the mixing stage. I've gotten Alessandro's drum tracks this year. It's not the way we normally work. We'd usually work with him in the studio. But yeah, I think we're all just trying to get through the year, and it's been a very strange time. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's hard for all of us to get motivated to and inspired to write new things. So yeah, I mean, it's there, I feel like there's also not only pressure that we put on ourselves, but pressure from other people as well, because I think they think, oh well, you're home all the time, you've already work remotely with your band, so you're gonna like write 4 amazing albums this year, it's going to be great. And so then of course you add that pressure to yourself, like wow, now I'm putting double quadruple pressure on myself to like create new things, when really it's okay to just take the time and relax, get through. And again, now that I've taken that time, I'm finally starting to get back to where I can, I think, like open up some sessions and actually get things done. But it's been a trying time, I'm not going to lie. It's hard to get motivated, whether it's remote or maybe I do need a little bit of that energy being in room with other people. It's more than I thought.
I'm gonna just jump in on that, like the energy of being in a room with other people, right? Because like with my blindfolded practice, we work with verbal, non-visual, empathic communication. It's about how do you feel the intention of other people, right? And there's so much information in that you don't talk about, that you don't try to generate or anything. It just happens, right? By being with other people, being in a different environment, being in a different space. What is the space charged with? What has happened in that space that comes through you? So when you take out any time, even just social time with other people, let alone creative time with other people, and no time in new environments and new spaces as well, that I think is pretty devastating. And yeah, I've gotten that question a lot too, Julie, of like, well, this must be great for you because you're all like, what you do alone in your living room is who you really are. And now you've been able to do that for a long time. And it's like, yeah, but there's a worldwide trauma happening that we're all feeling, that we have to process that before we can get into some other layer of stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, great answers. And Julie, it's interesting. That you said that, here's your Italian collaborators, your colleagues, but you haven't been doing anything. That's really interesting. And I think it speaks to what you're saying, Beth, that yeah, it's the global trauma. And one thing I've been doing, which might help, because this is confronting creativity, folks, and thank you for tuning in on Make Weird Music. And the whole thing is about accessing your creativity, thinking about it, improving it. And one of the things that I can offer up that I've been doing is looking at artists in other difficult times. So I've been a little obsessed, like looking at pandemics in the 1800s, 1600s, whatever, and then looking at who was an artist right then. So that's kind of interesting because sometimes it worked into it, sometimes it didn't. And it's been a comfort because, as you're both saying, these people found their art, whether it's musicians, a lot of painters and poets and stuff. But Beth, thank you for reminding, or both of you have specifically said, hey, we're in this global fucking, sometimes we blow it off. I don't think we blow it off, but sometimes we're not thinking about it, the whole 24 hours. But it's really the defining thing. Let me go to another question, and I want to come back to some of your thoughts on that. Let's see. So Corey McDaniels is asking a great question too. Again, on this collaboration idea, do either of you seek out artists that you respect and love, or is it more artists that you think will bring something new out of you? I mean, is there a choice there, or is it kind of random in your choices? Do you actually go looking for any specific people that you say, I got to really figure out how to find that person? Beth?
Both and all, it happens in myriad ways, depending on the situation. I mean, one quick thing that comes to mind is the art for my record, Push Through, was something that I ravenously follow visual artists on Instagram. It's one of my favorite things to do, and just check out people's stuff all the time. And I had fallen in love with this artist there that I just couldn't get enough of her work. And I notice a lot when I see something and I hear music to it, it's a indication of like, oh, okay, you're in something with this artist, right? Like you've got serious art crush happening here. And then in that instant, it was a moment of realizing like, hey, you have a whole record that needs artwork. And so I blindly wrote her, she's a Mexican artist, Ale de la Torre. So I didn't have any personal connection to her. I hadn't seen her work in person, right? I didn't know her. Nobody I knew her. I just fell in love with her work, and I went out and asked her, and that was great. Other instances are something where I hear somebody and it sparks something, Also, people reach out to me and blindly, ask me to do stuff, and I always kind of try to listen to there's just a deeper undercurrent in my intuition, in myself, like in my gut, whatever you want to call it, that's like, this is for you or this is not for you. You're not the person for this job, or you are definitely the person for this job, just trying to listen for that. So sometimes I know people for a long time, sometimes no information whatsoever.
That's great. Julie? On
Yeah,
that-
pretty much the same. Yeah, it's like you said, like it's both, I mean, especially when I was, recording my first albums, I've specifically like sought people out, specifically drummers, because I didn't want to have Logic programmed drum machine on the whole record. So I would, reach out to some badass drummers that I had met in my, few years of touring with Adrian. So yeah, but like in talking about EchoTest or collaborating with Beth, sometimes you just meet people and you just have this like spark and this amazing chemistry, and that you're going to do more things together, like again, like meeting Marco, and all of a sudden I wasn't expecting to start a band with him. So it's all about being ready, I guess, and open for these kinds of collaborations when they happen, being aware like when something is special and should be pursued.
Listening, right?
Yeah.
Like the same thing. Listening.
Pauline Oliveros, just listen, folks. 2 ears, no, that's great. And having your antenna up, that's another, and I'll put a pin in that for because again, creativity, one of the biggest things you can do is listen, folks. I meet artists, they're not listening. They're not waiting to receive that radio station.
Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in because I'm like, listening is a full body experience, right? Like you're experiencing that in the entirety of your physical body. So it's not even just with your ears, which is something that, like, when you talk about listening to each other with music, it's like, yeah, there's one level of that, but the listening happens on a full body, deeper level, right? And that's something that I'm constantly like, go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. And when I encounter other people that are doing that, that's where I'm just like, oh yeah, full activation. Let me get more time with this person,
No, that's great. And again, thank you. I'm learning so much, which is half the reason I love doing this show. You're right. It's not just your ears. I mean, that's the physical, like, frequency entry point, but so is your body. You're feeling it in your whole rhythm. You're tapping, you're moving, your vibrations. So yeah, great point. You're listening, full body. Beth, can you tell us the name of the artist that you mentioned? We'd love to link that. Can you tell her name and spell?
Ale de la Torre, ALEDELATORRE. I'm not very good at spelling, so that was a really big moment for me to try to call it up in my mind and see it and say it. Yeah, if you go and you look at the Push Through record on 7D Bandcamp, you'll also see her name right there, because the cover art is it's just beautiful. She knocked it out of the park, and I had nothing to do with it. I had no conception, and nothing had to do with anything I said that she created that beautiful thing. That was hers.
Interesting. So you just said, I'd like some artwork, and it happened.
Yeah. And I will also say, just like on a tangent on that, I had no interest in putting my face on the record. I don't really like to do that. I don't like to put my face on things. That's the thing that I'm trying to work with also. It's like, I want you to hear me and feel me, not just like look at me, right? And so I had no idea in doing a solo record that I was just like, no way, I don't want my face on there, right? And then she immediately came back and said, I want to do a portrait of you. Is that okay? And that little intuition of like listening on a deeper level, it's like, okay, you have found the best person for the job.
Yeah.
Trust them to do their job, because they do a job that you can't do. So let them do their job and be open to that. And that's what she did, and that's what she created. And I think it's spectacular.
That's great. And that's another abject lesson for improvisation. Let that person do their job. You're not them, they're not you. And again, we all know people can either improvise well or not. And that's one of the first things, how many times have you been in that situation, right, where people aren't just listen, be yourself. So that's great. Thank you. We'll link her art, and it's a beautiful album cover. I wanted to talk about Push Through for just a minute. I love the record, and I, you know, when you mentioned 2017 that you all met each other, that's kind of around when I met you. You played here in Asheville, something like that. It seems about 3 years, and it was a wonderful place, Revolve, which I'm actually on the board of directors on. And for folks who if you're ever coming through Asheville, look for Revolve Arts, look for Revolve. Incredible venue. It's an art gallery and live music happens. So that's where I saw Beth perform solo, and some of the material, you know, crosses over into the Push Through. So let's talk about that for a minute, because another thing that I really love about combining you for tonight is that I see no limits in your music. You do, I hate labels. We all know talking about music's like dancing about architecture, right? And but for the sake of argument, there's ambient music. There's stuff under the umbrella of what people call art music. I mean, it's all art, but you know, there's noise. There's kind of tribal, vocal, evocative, ritualistic sounding stuff. There's loops. There's pitched noises. There's, you know, of course your clarinet. And I love that you're both rockers. I mean, you watch the videos of these two human beings on stage, and it's rock and roll. It's punk rock. It gets ridiculously noisy and dirty. And so look for Push Through, folks. You know, if you have eclectic taste, which you certainly do, being here. Give us a little snapshot on Push Through. How long did it take you to pull that all together? Is it material you were working on the road for a while, and then you kind of...
It's a lot of different stuff. So I started Crystal Beth in 2010, and the premise was like, you need to be able to create music that you feel, that makes you feel a particular way on your own, first and foremost, and then start exploring this body of compositional work. So I made myself, like, the background is that I told myself I had to perform solo until I was no longer scared performing solo. Then I was allowed to create the band version, the Boom Boom Band version. And so that took a couple of years before I felt comfortable on stage by myself, just, you know, with the clarinet and the voice and loop pedal. And then I made the band, and then compositions started to split off, right? Like, some stuff is just for the solo project, some stuff is just for the band, some stuff gets handled in both, but it gets handled differently because one is a 5-piece rock band and the other is one woman with a clarinet, right? Like, so I didn't want to make a solo record. I didn't want to make a full-length record until I really felt that the quality of the music had been explored in my body, for me, like road tested over and over and over again, right? And not any one composition, but just like the body of work, period, right? So that was, 2017. I decided it's time, I'm ready, I'm gonna go in and make a full-length record. And I had 2 days in the studio, and I just played, like, went through everything that I felt was coming through. Like, I always think of it as like, answer the damn phone, Beth. Like, you hear the phone ringing, pick up the phone and see what's there. So I spent 2 days in the studio doing that. So some of those pieces were things I'd been playing for 10 years. Some of them were things that I wrote for, like, one of them I wrote for a book that I needed to make music for, the book, but they were all kinds of different things. The last track on the record is all improvised because it was a moment of, like, you need to sit down with some things that are going on in your life and reach out at a distance and really feel this moment, which you can only do through improvising. And I ended up recording 15 tracks in 2 days, and then went back and said, what, now you think of a record, what does the record want? How does it want to shape itself? And then the 8 tracks that are on the record emerged in that moment of, like, this is the flow, this is how it goes to, take you on this particular journey. So that was the record. What I didn't know was coming was the pandemic. And so what has happened now is, because I recorded 15 tracks and 8 went on the record, the music that I've been putting out over the pandemic is stuff that was recorded during those sessions that I've been going back through and polishing and working on.
That's great. Okay, that was actually on my long list. So that answers that, where that stuff's coming from. Wow. Okay. No, the record feels like that. It feels like it's stuff that's really been simmering and been around for a while, especially if people watch some of your live things. So that's great. Okay. So that answers also. That's the most recent thing, and there's bits of it coming out. Again, people go to Beth's Bandcamp when you can, because there's so many different projects on here. You know, Silt and Experiment Number 1 and you know, Sweet Fig Eater. There's
you're on the improvised stuff now. Awesome.
Yeah. Those are all such great things, and they're all different. Tea with Mr. Patton, you know, that's very interesting. I haven't heard that one yet. Julie, because you've got so many projects going on too on your. I can hardly keep track sometimes of what's been out when, but what's the most recent thing that you'd love people to check out that hasn't had a full cycle yet?
Well, most recent would be I recorded one of my live streams, and so I called that cheekily I Can't Do That on Stage Anymore,
right,
in honor of Frank Zappa. So technically that was the most recent release. And that's like a 90-minute set. I challenged myself. These guys kept from Progstock kept asking me if I wanted to play a 90-minute solo set, and I kept saying no. And then finally they wore me down, and I I relented. And I thought, you know, it would be a nice challenge, you know. So yeah, came up with a whole 90 minutes of just solo bass music. So that was fun. I decided to put that out. And then the last like in studio, really more polished full band thing would be EchoTest's Daughter of Ocean, which we put out in 2019, which I sold all across the United States with Adrian on his Pop-Sided tour.
Right.
And that was my first ever vinyl release. So that was my first foray into that. And I look forward to doing that again, to pressing vinyls again. I'm very curious, since we're giving Bandcamp all this love today and free promotion. Have you noticed like the new Bandcamp vinyl campaigns? My brother did one successful campaign for his Wiseacre record.
That's great, and they've got a streaming thing. They've got.
Yeah. I'm very curious to look into their concert streaming platform. Yeah, live streaming stuff. Yeah.
And I believe next Friday, right, the first Friday of every month, they do 0% folks. So you know that's great. So the vinyl record, of course, Daughter of Ocean features Beth as well on one track.
Exactly. Just the one. Yeah. Sorry. Next one.
Yeah, no, Beth on vinyl. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And you know, one of the things I do as an interviewer is you don't want to insert yourself to the idea. But I'm going to make an exception here because you brought up Adrian Belew, and I'm so honored and just highlighted my career to have spent something like 12 or 15 years with you around the world.
Yep.
I work for Adrian Belew. And that's an area, too, where just people coming to an Adrian Belew show, they're going to hear you do all kinds of music. Oh, my God, right? Pop, metallic stuff, bluesy stuff, King Crimson. And you get to improvise, you know. And one fun thing, we got to find a tape of this. Folks, this is going to flip you out, but there's a tape of Julie Slick, Eric Slick, and Adrian Belew doing Back in Black by AC/DC, and I'm singing it. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, the Australia tour.
Can't make that shit up. So Julie will play, you know, it's music. It's what's happening. We're going to wrap in a few minutes, and thank you so much for your time. And I want to invite both of you to my other show, which is going to be on alternate Wednesdays, and it's just more of the technical stuff, like how did you record this, and some of the gear stuff. So that's for the nerds. It's for the geeks who sometimes on this show they've already said, you know, but this show's more about what we're talking about. But I'd like to invite you both to the gear show, where we
nice.
Go down that nerdy pathway and talk about that. So back over to you, Beth, and I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the Blindfold ensemble. I find that very intriguing. What give us a little snapshot of that for people that
Yeah, so I started also in 2010. I guess that was a big year, with this blindfolded music ensemble. And the question that started it was, there's this magical thing happens when you're playing with people that you really connect with, where you start to make decisions as if you were one organism, and you feel things coming through. Like, for instance, in an improvised context, you feel when a soloist is getting ready to break through, and then it happens, and everybody, it's like superheroes unite. Everybody comes together to support that person, and you feel it as an audience member, you feel it as a musician, because something in the room changes, right? Like the state of fire in the room changes. And that is my favorite place in the universe to exist and to be. And I was like, how do you practice that? You know, because it's a thing that just happens. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But how do you actually work on it and try to get there quicker? Which led to the blindfolded practice of, if you remove your sight, if you remove this sense, you bring more awareness into the rest of your body and how you're listening with the rest of your body, and try to hear the intention of the people that you're playing with. And so I started creating etudes. I started a series of exercises for blindfolded musicians where everybody memorizes the form. Like, we're going to say a duo, then a soloist, then a duo, then a drum solo, then everybody comes in at the same time. You have a big crescendo and you cut off together. That's the form, right? And then you have however many people do that together without predetermining who the soloist is going to be, who the duo is going to be, who's going to play the part of the drum solo, right? It doesn't have to be the drummer. That could be somebody else doing the percussive role on their instrument. But you start to feel those things as a full organism, and how you move through that together. How do you take 10 people into a giant climax and cut off together without somebody conducting, you know? So it was like, how do you create the invisible conductor that everybody is plugged into and is listening to and is governed by, which part of that practice is getting rid of courtesy and competitive composing, where you're like, I don't want to do this because I just did something really loud and I don't want to step on other people's toes or whatever. It's like, no, if you hear it, if you feel it, it is your obligation to do it. And you know, same thing, competitive composing, getting away from, oh, that was really cool that they did that, now I want to do something and show that I'm cool. All of that bullshit has got to go. I don't like any of it, and I want to figure out a way to practice beyond that. And the blindfold for me opened that up. It just totally took me into another realm. That's what I was actually doing in Asheville, was a residency at the University of North Carolina, blindfolded residency, working with the students with this practice. So it doesn't matter what instrument you play, it doesn't matter if you're by yourself, if you're with other people, it doesn't matter what kind of music you play. I've done boom boom band rehearsals in the blindfold, of just to work on how you really connect and feel each other without looking directly at each other.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad this is recorded, because there's so many, you're both dropping so much science here. There's so much, it's like some workshop stuff. The invisible conductor. Wow. That's like an album title. That's it. No, but that, you're right. There's an invisible conductor, and there's that aspect in improv of there's no competition here. Yet we all have watched ensembles like that. You're right. I remember when I first saw you, you did a blindfold piece or two at that show, and I was like, wow, okay, sure. And that's another great nugget for creative people, like, do something that takes you out of your element. Yeah, shut down a sense, play an instrument that's not yours, right? Play, so great stuff. Julie, I wanted to, we're going to wrap in a few. Unfortunately, we could talk for another hour, but as I said, you're both invited back to not only do this again down the road, but also on the Gear Show. We're going to do that. and we're going to listen to a track. I'd like to get your thoughts on the track. Before that, let me remind people too. Tomorrow night we're doing at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'll be here chatting with the one and only Alex Lifeson, and one of the focuses is, where's the album? I wasn't ready for this, but I'm going to focus, by the way, on it's 25 years from his very strange record called Victor, and I urge people, check it out. And if you're not a Rush fan, it sounds like not Rush, at least half of it. So we're going to talk about that and some other stuff. So that's tomorrow, and then we've got a list of who's coming up on Make Weird Music. But a lot of amazing artists. I'm not going to fill up the time to list them all here, but go check that out. It's every other Friday right here. And let's see, Friday the 12th, we've got, we're going to post it up for you. But just wanted to remind you of that. Please also subscribe. That really helps us a lot. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Hit the like button. Help us do this, because this is an independent venture as well. And Anthony is doing an amazing venture here to get this music out. So let's just wrap by we wanted to play something. I wanted to play that track Dull Eyes Light Head. Mm-hmm. So give us a little perspective on this song, and then we'll listen to it.
So this is track 7 on EchoTest's latest release called Daughter of Ocean, which is a concept album. Imagine that, a concept prog album. And and the whole record was inspired by stories that reports that people that survived the tsunami in Japan 10 years ago, they were just reportedly like getting possessed. Taxi drivers in particular were picking up ghosts. And I just found this story like extremely fascinating. And the whole record is supposed to feel like this sort of possession. And this is really like, I think, to me, as the climax of the record, where you're really like being taken over by the demon that lives inside of Beth.
I've been typecast.
Yeah.
Brought in for the demon exorcism class.
That's great. That's great, because I used the word exorcism yesterday telling someone about your music, so that's kind of funny.
Perfect.
Okay.
And so we brought in Jenny Founds, who I work with Start Making Sense, of course, and who I've known through the School of Rock for many, many years. And so she had a great time listening to Beth's tracks and then like figuring out what she, like translating your Bethnic into words she could try to harmonize with. So the ending result is this song.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to take it out on that. Thank you both. And, folks, thanks for checking this out tonight or whenever you're watching it. DJ,